Hello, biology kids. It's Mr. Chemist, and I'm back with another lesson for you on. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the biochemistry molecules. You should be able to hear me better because I have my microphone today. Hope that is useful for you. Thank you for everyone that sent me a message yesterday to talk about is useful, and it helps me guide further discussions. Class. We're just looking at it. We have digestion lab. I'd just like to clarify and for the answers for that one. I'd like to go over the macromolecules table, what elements, monomers, polymers, etc. And I also like to give you a little further explanation about the monomers. And then your work today will be with the monomer. There's an Amoeba Sisters video. Next week, Tuesday, we'll have a little chemist quiz, formative quiz with the biochemistry, the different molecules and energy. We'll make sure you have that stuff down. All right. So here in the digestion lab, you were looking at the line and eating proteins. First task you had to do was to actually figure out how many cuts there were in the different amino acids, and it worked out to n-1. So feel free to pause the video anywhere here if you need to think about the answers or check some of your answers. Correct. The first protein, there was 16 amino acids. You had 15 bonds broken. Protein 2 had 15. 3 had 15. The fourth one was a little bit with 14 cuts. And then you had to follow this recipe to make soup. So we had to make muscle, collagen for itself. When you do this, then you are going to create new chemical bonds. And that requires it. On page 2, here's data table 1. So here's how much energy that you used first. You're using the scissors, physically cutting the different chemical bonds. And here's our numbers, 15, 15, 15, 14. So it's 59 total bonds. And then we're just going to use a nice round number here, 10. 10 kilocalories per bond. It's released with each bond broken. So then it's pretty simple math there. 15 times 10, 150, 15 times 10, 150, blah, 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 add it all up. 590 calories are released. The protein. It seems like a lot, but remember, we're going to build more proteins again. So overall, proteins don't have a large net energy gain, and they're not a source of it. We use them for structure. So you should have had a few left over, either 4 or 5 different amino acids there. And there should be some switching. The proteins that you eat don't have the exact same recipe for amino acids or the exact same order. Might see difference there. Make sure you give me an example of a swap there. For example, threonine. We didn't get threonine in the first protein digested, so we had. All right, data table 2, then we're going to build bonds. So using the recipe on page 1, put them back together. And so look at how many bonds were made there and just put it in the table. It's 14, 11, 15, and 13 for a grand total of 53 bonds made. So it is 6 less. You still have some net gain of energy, but it's not significant. So we can do our times 10 for each of these bonds. How much energy do we have to use to make them? 14 times 10 is 40, 11 times 110, etc. And you add it all up to get 530. Compare that to how much energy was given off during digestion. We still have a net gain of 60 calories. Now you have to ask yourself, is calories enough for a lion to survive for the day? And the answer is definitely no. And the answer is no. But the lions actually get most of their energy from breaking down fats. The science word for fat is lipids. While they eat meat that has protein and lipids, protein is not a good source of energy. The lipids. The only time that your body would break down proteins for energy is if you're starving and you've exhausted all of your other resources. You'll start to see the body physically get smaller because those proteins, that structure is broken down. Not ideal. They kind of work through that here. 60 kcals is the net energy. Lion could use this for hunting, although they won't get very far. Sleeping might be a little bit better, or growth, or even that, you won't get very far. Page 3 and 4 was the elephant digestion, and elephants eat mostly plants. So we're going to look at the carbohydrates that they use there. Overall, the process is called digestion. No big secret, digestion. And what happens? The bonds are broken. And we're going to digest the big plant molecule cellulose. This carbohydrate is a polymer of glucose. When we break bonds, we're going to release energy. And we'll also release glucose, which is useful to make eggs. And this math here doesn't make a lot of sense until you do this table. So I'm going to skip down to the table. Between steps 2 and 3, you're going to break one bond. Between 3 and 4, you're going to break two bonds, one on each side. And we're going to assume that the cellulose model is quite a bit bigger. So if we look at the model here, you would see the cellulose part and breaking it down. So we add up the total amount of energy. It's like a nice easy number. Assume it's 10 kilocalories per bond. So we get 10 here, 20 here, that's 30. And then you go through and count all the bigger structures there. You get somewhere between 500 and 550 bonds broken. So times 10 is about 5,500, which is, you know. And then you have to ask yourself, is that enough energy for an elephant to live for the day? And you got to think, we're getting better. We're getting a lot closer. And even an elephant might have enough energy there. And that is a good source of energy. So then there's a couple of wrapping up questions there. Lion gets 500 calories versus the elephant gets 1,000. It would last 500 minutes. The elephant also needs longer time to digest that. It takes longer to digest. So they have a bigger digestive tract. We found out they also have a bigger cecum. Remember, the cecum is where the bacteria cellulose here. And then they kind of lead you into the next activity, which is what element is missing in cellulose. That's just going to be nitrogen. Proteins have nitrogen. Carbohydrates do not. That is an important idea. Proteins have nitrogen. Cellulose and other carbs do not. Yeah, I'll lead us into that activity today. So where do plants get nitrogen? Where would elephant get nitrogen? We'll see that in the nitrogen cycle. Plants do have nitrogen to build. And so when elephants eat the cellulose in plants, they also get protein. Use the amino acids there to make protein. If you need help on that one, you need to pause and rewind and go back. Feel free to it this time. And let's take a look at some of the organic macromolecules. This is a sheet we used for BioX a few years ago. And it definitely So the first thing to do is carbs, proteins, fats, lipids, the science word for fat, what elements are in it. Carbohydrate, carbon and hydrate. We all know water is H2O, so C, H, and O. That's the three elements we have. Fats also have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Proteins also have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, but they also have nitrogen. And we saw that with the drawing last week. So make sure you circle star nitrogen. Right, what are they made out of? What is the monomer? Carbohydrates are made out of a monosaccharide. Mono means one. Saccharide is an old word for sweet. Simple sugar or single sugar. And so far we've just done, there's two other types as well. The monomer for proteins or amino acids. We talked about 20 different ones last week. And then for the fat, the type we've talked about so far is triglyceride, one glycerol, three fat. These are technically not monomers because they don't repeat in so instead we just call them building blocks. All right, let's draw one. I love drawing biochemistry. So here would be a glucose. Here's the OH group, is called hydroxyl. Here's the amino acid group. We have the NH2 nitrogen here. Amino group, central carbon, and then we have the carboxylic acid. Carboxyl group, C double bond to O, and C single bond, O single bond to H. In the middle, we have the central carbon and hydrogen. That is the same on every amino acid. And the R group, which is different. And as we were cutting out those orange amino acid monomers last week, on Tuesday, you would have seen different R groups. Then the triglyceride, we had the glycerol, fatty acids. There should be three fatty acids there. I had quite a few questions about functions and examples of molecules. So let's look at some of the carbs. We have starch and cellulose. Starch is how plants store energy. Cellulose is how plants build their structure, both in the cell walls and then overall structure. They don't have any bones or muscle, so they use cellulose. Starch is also used for cell communication. Glucose in animals and plants for energy. Glycogen is a special branched form of starch that animals use. Liver. How about amino acids and proteins? Oh, in yesterday's video, I showed quite a bit of protein uses. Here's a few examples: antibodies, transportation of molecules, hormones, actin fiber in your muscles. Hemoglobin is a transport protein. It has 4 proteins. And then for fats, plants don't get fat, so they don't store energy in lipids. Only animals do. Animals will also use it for insulation. Hi, Mr. Fuller. Some other examples would be lard, olive oil. Use waxes quite a bit to protect the leaf from water loss, and that's really important. I hope that's useful for you. You need to pause it and look at that, compare it to your chart. Fill in anything that you're missing. Okay. And a little help for our monomers versus polymers. Here's kind of an analogy that we used to use in regular bio. The monomer, the single unit, like beads. Okay, it's a single repeating unit. And then the polymer, okay, poly means 3 or more. The necklace is like beads on a string. It's a polymer. It's a bunch of molecules put together into a chain. We see those polymers with carbs. starch, cellulose, and proteins, putting the amino acids together into a long chain necklace. That's useful for you. I hope we can visualize that a little bit better. And then to kind of tie the molecules to the digestion lab, I really like this diagram. Red has carbohydrates, we digest it into glucose. Meat has lots of proteins, we digest it into amino acids. Here's a pretty big fat with margarine. We can digest it into cholesterol and fatty acids. I really like that. And it ties together the idea of digestion, polymers, so the types of foods, molecules, what they could. Hope that's useful for you. I have some other things as well. Okay. And then your work for today, go to the cycle diagram. Day 16. It looks like this. Okay. Look at the different cycles here and complete the questions. For the carbon cycle, there's a few main things here. Photosynthesis, cellular respiration, both in plants and animals. Also have the chemical formulas there. That is the key idea here. Carbon moves from living and non-living things through the environment. So CO2 is a gas in the atmosphere. Plants breathe it in. They also get water from their roots, light from the sun. Through the process of photosynthesis, they can make glucose and other. This enters the living part. When eat plants, they can get the glucose. Both plants and animals do respiration, which is the opposite chemical equation. CO2 is given back to the animals. Other things that are going on here, dead and dying waste, fossils and fossil fuels. And then not shown here is how people burn a lot of fossil fuels. Look at those, answer the simple questions there. You've probably seen the carbon cycle. A little more complex for 10th grade is the nitrogen cycle. So how does nitrogen move? Remember, we only use nitrogen for proteins. Okay, proteins. The key part here is that nitrogen gas is in the atmosphere, and plants and animals can't use it. It's an inert gas. We breathe it in, breathe it out, take it in by ourselves. So instead, we have to use bacteria. How does bacteria move from the atmosphere to the soil or water and living things? How does it move from the soil and water and living things back to the atmosphere? The answer is always bacteria. Bacteria. So pay attention to that part of the cycle over here. So symbiotic bacteria and free-living bacteria and nitrogen and turn it into nitrates and nitrites and ammonia. Okay. These are the molecules that are useful to living things. If plants can drink them in, and then they can use them to make. And then when animals eat the plants, they can digest the protein and make their own. And then here's the bacteria that releases N2 gas back into the atmosphere. Denitrified bacteria. The key ideas there. There's another inorganic way that some nitrogen is formed into nitrates and nitrites. That's through light. There will be small amounts of nitrogen. Gas turned into nitrates. It's lightning. And then when you're done with your proteins and you digest it, your kidneys will filter it out of your blood. And that will go into your urine, the liquid waste. And have the elephant here. So it's a little biology there for you. So take a look at this one. You don't have to memorize the parts, but you do need to recognize some of the molecules. molecules here. Right, that is the end of your morning meeting for today. I hope that is useful for you. You need to go back and watch any part of it. That makes sense to me. Have a good day.